I'm worried about the kid flying a helicopter right outside the window.
Yeah, that thing from the Road Warrior.
Mad Max?
Yeah, but Mad Max was the first one, and then Road Warrior was the second one. And in the second one, there was the guy that flew one like a helicopter extremely similar to that.
To start off with, should we describe what we're looking
Yes. Yes. Go through and just tell us what the picture
Pause
shows.
on the podcast and watch Road Warrior with Max.
We're really giving the listeners the wrong impression, saying that this looks like the Road Warrior. It is a sleek, futuristic image.
Hey, whatever.
Okay. Welcome to Mistopian, the podcast that evaluates the past academically inaccurate predictions about the future that we now live in. Because why set up your lesson on a Promethean board when you can just project onto a whiteboard and use regular old expos instead? I am your host, Patrick, joined here by my co-host,
Alex.
But we are today also joined by Mealey and Tudisco, former hosts of Unprofessional Development. I'm going to throw it to them. Let them tell us who they are. Mealey, why don't you start?
Oh, I don't know. I was raised in a cave by...
Okay, we don't have to go that far back.
Great start, guys.
Tudisco, your turn.
I apologize. I'm Mealy's dealer. I'm actually responsible for this. I apologize. I'm Tudisco, so I've been teaching English for, 12 years now. On our podcast, we bring on teachers. We talk about all the ridiculous things that happen in the classroom and teaching in really wild, crazy places.
Yes, we do that. We did do that in the past, which I guess is related to this podcast, which is somehow past and future tied together or something.
That's correct.
It is.
And we all know each other because we all taught at the same school.
Full disclosure.
Yes. Well, we were all employed at the same school. Like, how much teaching was going on, maybe collectively, is hard to gauge.
So, Alex, you taught English, as did Tudisco. Mealey, you taught math.
I
teach
still
math
do.
still.
Yep.
I teach social studies.
I want to point out that I also taught theater for 2 years and 8th grade science for like half a year.
Oh my, I didn't know that. And you did some kind of TV studio class or whatever that was, right?
I did media and journalism.
I always wanted you to do an episode of like the school news where zombies attacked. I just wanted that.
That was
That would have been so good.
So all the major subjects are represented here. Yeah. So I have 4 predictions for you, ranging from the year 1900 to the year 1958, about what education would look like in the future. And now we live in the future. I want to evaluate these predictions, see what they got right, what they got wrong.
Ooh, okay.
I'm going to assume mostly wrong.
You might be surprised.
Okay.
You also might not be.
Those are literally the two options, yes.
It's 50-50.
So we're going to start in 1900, the Ladies' Home Journal.
Oh, I love that magazine.
My favorite.
I was going to ask, how familiar are you with the Ladies' Home Journal?
I believe my mom had some episodes, what do you call a magazine episode?
Issues?
Issue, there you go. I've got issues, and my mom had issues. Yes, I've got mom issues, so there we go. Thank you. I'll be here all week. Sorry. Okay, shut up, Mealy. Let the podcast go.
Do you know how old the Ladies' Home Journal is?
How old is it?
I'm just going to tell you the year. Ladies' Home Journal was founded in 1883. It's an offshoot of a newspaper called the Tribune and Farmer, because they had a really popular spread called Women at Home. They were like, let's take that out. Let's make a whole magazine for that.
We don't want to mess up our magazine with the lady stuff anymore.
Nope.
In the 1880s, you know what women love? Home.
And journaling. Apparently.
It lasted all the way until 2016.
Wow.
Oh, it doesn't exist anymore?
There's no online
No,
version?
magazines. People don't read them.
No? Okay.
In the year 1900, they published an article called What May Happen in the Next 100 Years. It was written by John Elfreth Watkins Jr.,
Mm-hmm.
and John Elfreth Watkins Sr. was the curator of mechanical technology at the Smithsonian.
Okay, so we couldn't have ladies writing in the Ladies' Home Journal in 1900. Apparently, that would make no sense.
I mean, honestly, they were reading, and that was probably pretty big for the
Hey,
time.
Yes. There you go.
It's true.
Although I can imagine some old farmer reading to his wife the Ladies' Home Journal,
That's true.
keeping out certain articles.
Yes.
Wow, that was horrifyingly dystopian. That's
So, in this article, there are over 24 short predictions about what the future holds for America, and they're all over the place. Some of them are correct. It says Americans will be taller.
Yep.
On average, we're about 1.5 inches taller than we were back in 1900. Women are about a half inch taller.
Womp.
Foods will not be exposed to the air, and refrigeration will be used to keep food fresh longer.
Cool.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
That was good.
Images will be transmitted across the country within hours, saying that photographs will be telegraphed.
Nice. Oh, yeah.
First wire photograph was sent in 1920.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's got a number of these that are right. Some are kind of near misses. It says we'll regulate the temperature of our houses through hot and cold spigots.
Okay.
I mean, that's pretty close to like basically a radiator,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah. Mhm.
Oh, yeah. Good point.
Yeah.
Like conceptually.
Depends how you define spigot. You know, your vents could be just an updated spigot.
yeah.
It says that store purchases will come through pneumatic tubes.
What was with the obsession with tubes?
I love pneumatic tubes. They're the best. I worked in a store called Brookstone back in the 1980s. And now, if did you ever go into a Brookstone when they had the pneumatic tubes? They would only have one item on display in the actual storefront in the mall, and there was a bunch of stuff in the back. So people would bring up and they would write the numbers of the stuff, and you would put it in a pneumatic tube and go, psh, and then people that worked in the back would put it on this tray, and it would come on this conveyor belt, and then you would check them out. So that actually happened.
So, hold on. I really feel like you're messing with me right now. You mean to tell me that the original Brookstone, it was empty. It just had a single pneumatic tube, and people would just
No. You go in the store, right?
Right.
And so there's this thing that you want. It's like a hammer and a screwdriver. What's some oddball thing that you can buy for Father's Day that costs $30? There's
Knife
one
wrench.
on display. You can't buy that one. You had a clipboard that the person that greeted you gave you a clipboard. You write down 3785 on your little thing, and you go around. You write, now you see this thing that waters your plants or whatever it is, and you write down 2364. Then you come up to the cash register. You hand me the slip. I put it in the tube. It goes back to Al. Al goes and looks at the numbers and pulls them from where they were on the shelves in the back part where they were 10 or 20 or whatever it is of each thing, and then he's supposed to put it on the conveyor belt. But like I said, Al would just carry them out and go, "Here you go, here's your stuff," and then I would bring them up, and then they would go home.
Oh my God.
It wasn't very efficient. It was kind of stupid.
It seems like a lot of work.
It really does.
They were really committed to the tube.
Yeah.
People really thought that tubes were going to be the thing. This article also says that food will be bought from restaurants and delivered via pneumatic tubes.
There you go. That would be so cool. I would love to have that in my house.
Tubes are such an efficient way of travel. You know what else is? Travel.
But the paragraph in this that we want to focus on is called How Children Will Be Taught. So we're going to do a little popcorn reading.
Oh, no. God. Trigger alert.
I knew that was going to happen.
I'm going to make Alex start.
Guys, it's still the summer. I don't want to read.
We've already started school, so Patrick's in that mode.
If you clap to get my attention, I'm signing off.
Alex is going to start reading. We're going to read this whole thing, and then we'll just kind of talk about some of the predictions in it.
Okay, so you want me to read and then I popcorn somebody?
Whenever you get tired of reading.
Okay.
Just to make sure we're all reading, okay, Mealey?
I don't understand.
A university education will be free to every man and woman. Popcorn Tudisco.
Sorry, I'm thrown off by just that first sentence. Several great national universities will have been established. Children will study a simple English grammar adapted to simplified English and not copied after the Latin. Popcorn Mealey.
Time will be saved. Popcorn Patrick.
You didn't even finish the sentence.
No.
Time will be saved by grouping like studies. Poor students will be given free board, free clothing, and free books if ambitious and actually unable to meet their school and college expenses. Popcorn Alex.
Medical inspectors regularly visiting the public schools will furnish poor children with free eyeglasses, free dentistry, and free medical attention of every kind. The very poor will, when necessary, get free rides to and from school and free lunches between sessions. Popcorn Tudisco.
In vacation time, poor children would be taken on trips to various parts of the world. That sounds like a euthanasia program.
Yes.
Etiquette and housekeeping will be important studies in the public schools.
Wow.
Okay.
I'm going to say that's more than 50% accurate.
More than 50% accurate?
Yeah.
That is way less than 50% accurate. What are you talking about?
Come at me.
They had like 2 things right. They got busing and lunch. And you really got to put the word lunch in quotation marks.
You can get free glasses at school, not dentistry. You can go to the nurse. That's free medical, not of every kind. Okay.
They do vaccinations at school. Do they still do vaccinations at school?
Yeah. I guess they do like, I remember my therapist doing like scoliosis checks and stuff like that. I guess I get that.
Time will be saved by grouping like studies,
What does that mean?
like subjects.
We're going to learn math and English at the same time?
No, like studies. That means similar studies.
I don't understand how you're saving time by grouping like studies.
Like courses. The concept.
What 2 courses are we grouping that we're saving
No,
time?
I feel like they're talking about courses.
I have no idea. You have to predict time saving if you're predicting the future. That's definitely something you have to predict, right?
Like in a one-room schoolhouse, you have like a primer and you're learning like everything kind of all at once.
Yeah.
But if you group like studies, like all your English is grouped together, all your math is grouped together.
Okay.
That's what I'm taking that as.
Yeah.
Sure, that makes
So
sense.
more of how like middle school and high school are, as opposed to elementary school.
Yeah.
I want to give you a little bit more background on one sentence here. It says that you will study a simple English grammar adapted to simplified English and not copied after the Latin. There is a separate prediction that said that there will no longer be C, X, or Q in our language.
Wow.
I kind of get that. I mean, other than Q, like, C and X, like, those sounds are kind of already taken care of. I get where they're going with that.
You guys are familiar with Esperanto?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes?
100%.
Okay. So this is, I guess, tied to that a little bit too.
He was in love with Quasimodo?
You know Esperanto, right? Tudisco?
Yes.
Okay.
I've had my students read about it.
Nice.
Okay, cool. No one here speaks Esperanto though, right?
No, unfortunately.
Esperanto like headquarters is in Raleigh or something like that though, I think.
Really?
Somewhere in there.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to get us back on track. I apologize.
Thank you, Tudisco.
The first sentence, though, I'm pretty shocked the 1900 Ladies' Home Journal said women are going to get free university education.
Yeah.
Like, that's pretty wildly liberal
Yeah.
in my mind.
Yeah.
For 1900?
Yeah. That is interesting. We were starting to see more women go to school at that point. The Industrial Revolution kind of pushed people to it. Now, university is different from college, especially back then. And so there was a lot of women who were doing, working, being secretaries, stuff like that. But saying university education, I think you're right. That is a pretty big deal.
So there are countries where a university education is free to every man and woman.
Ooh, what good countries are those?
I don't know. I hear people say stuff about that. Whenever they want to badmouth the best country in the world, which is America. Okay, they try to make up lies about other countries giving free education. I don't know. Does anyone know it? I feel like there are some European and other countries that have free education.
Yeah, the
University
UK has
education.
free college education.
Yeah, and some I think
Scandinavian.
Scandinavian countries. Yeah.
I will say, too, if it sounds weird for people who don't have an English degree, talking about how English will be taught and not copied after the Latin, that's pretty much because back then, if I'm remembering correctly, there really weren't any grammar books.
Okay.
So, like, in order to check grammar, you had to translate to Latin because there was Latin grammar books, and that was like back in the day where they say things like you can't end a sentence with a preposition
Yeah.
because in Latin the preposition is attached to the word that it's connecting to. So it's a stupid rule in English, but you literally couldn't translate from the Latin if you ended a sentence with a preposition.
Oh, wow, that's pretty fascinating.
That is so interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Huh. Well, now I know why we have that stupid rule. I tell my students to ignore that all the time.
Yeah, you absolutely should.
Yes.
It goes back to pre-Strunken White days. What were we even doing?
I do feel kind of bummed out about the second to last sentence. In vacation time, poor children will be taken on trips to various parts of the world.
Yes.
Like, that's during vacation time. That's not even talking about, like, field trips. That's just summer break. Like, let's go explore the world, guys.
That would be cool. They'd probably have to travel in pneumatic tubes to go to those parts of the world, I'm guessing. That...
And etiquette and housekeeping, important studies. I mean, like, home ec became a thing.
It did.
It was.
Yeah.
I took it.
Yep.
We've now seen the death of home ec.
Yeah, it's kind of gone.
I wish we taught etiquette.
We live at a level in the future where nobody needs to cook. All right, if you know how to heat, then you're fine.
Just stick
True.
things in the microwave.
Absolutely. This is what George Jetson promised us.
There was a book I read recently that said that a lot of food, like processed food companies in the 50s and 60s, in order to kind of like infiltrate schools, would create these scholarship programs for home ec classes to get the home ec teachers on board with the idea of like microwavable meals and all of that. And so that was a direct insidious marketing thing that they tried to do, because when they're trying to promote their microwave meals, like all these home ec teachers are teaching kids how to like actually cook, and they're like, well, we can't have that. So they kind of went in through the back door, as it were, to bring their microwave meals to the American kids.
Patrick, do you remember anything you learned from home ec, by the way? Because I only remember one thing, and it wasn't taught to me by the teacher. But what did you learn anything that?
I don't even know what that means.
Well, I'll explain it to you in a
I'm very
while.
worried about what that could mean.
It means Aaron Moore taught me how to make sugar butter. Okay, which is the best. He's like, try this, and he's like, he took a spoon and scooped off like a teaspoon of butter and a teaspoon of sugar, put them on a plate, and just went mash, 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 like you do at that ice cream place, right? he's like marble slab. But anyway, he's like, taste this.
Cold Stone.
Cold Stone Creamery, yeah. I ate like a spoonful of like sugar butter, and I'm like, oh.
That's just buttercream frosting, though. Like, that is literally what buttercream frosting is,
Right,
right?
or it's like, someone's like, oh, it's like cake without like the eggs and the flour. And I'm like, yes, it's just, it's so good though.
I took home ec in 8th grade. I remember baking cookies one day, but mostly I remember that the home ec teacher, whenever we were out of line, would send us outside to go talk to the stop sign.
Oh, that's a good classroom management technique.
I mean, one way to manage a classroom is to take your troublesome children and put them close to traffic.
Yeah. Oh, a real stop sign.
Yes, we went down to the road and talked to the stop sign.
She had not like she had one that she just made and had in the hallway, and you talk to the stop sign. Oh, like a real stop
Go
sign.
down the stairs, by the buses, out to Highway 258, and be careful.
Did you ever go out and talk to the stop sign?
Multiple times.
Nice. After a while, I would just misbehave to go talk to the stop sign, probably, right?
Yo, can I get out of class?
Yeah, go talk to the stop sign.
Oh my god, that's
I got to
some drill
pick up where I
sergeant
left
stuff.
off yesterday.
Oh, that's great.
Wow.
That's insane.
That's good teaching.
The 90s were a different time.
Yeah.
You apparently, went to school in a weird Shel Silverstein. Like,
Yeah.
Would we like to move forward to 1927?
Yeah, let's do it.
Sure.
So we're going to look at Procrustes, or the future of English education. Now, I should note that this is about education in England, so none of us are experts in that, but
Okay.
I think that it'll touch on some stuff that we'll find interesting.
Okay.
So this is by M. Alderton Pink and comes from the book series Today and Tomorrow. Is anyone in here familiar with Today and Tomorrow?
I have not.
The book. The concepts, yeah.
Yeah.
So in 1923, there was a geneticist named J.B.S. Haldane who wrote a book called Daedalus, or Science in the Future, and it explored his prediction of a future in which humans could control their own evolution through mutation and the use of in vitro fertilization, which he called ectogenesis.
AKA eugenics.
Don't get ahead of me.
I was right.
That book was a key influence on Aldous Huxley's A Brave New World.
Yeah, Brave New World. I love him. He's awesome.
And the essay was really popular, and so there was an English publisher who used it as a template for an entire book series. There are 110 books in the Today and Tomorrow series. It's a wide-ranging series of books. I'm going to read you some of the titles because I find these interesting. We have Diogenes, or The Future of Leisure, Lysistrata, or Woman's Future and Future Women,
Ooh, I want to read that.
Galatia, or The Future of Darwinism, Ouroboros, or The Mechanical Extension of Mankind, Nuntius, or Advertising and Its Future, Cain, or The Future of Crime, Hymen, or The Future of Marriage.
Oh, my goodness.
There are only two of those references I didn't get.
Okay.
Hymen appears at the very end of As You Like It, and, like, marries the couples. Spoiler alert for Shakespeare.
400-year-old spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Are y'all familiar with the Greek myth of Procrustes?
No.
No.
I had never heard of it before I saw this. I was like, what the hell is Procrustes? In Greek mythology, Procrustes was a smith and a bandit who attacked people by stretching them or cutting off their legs so that they would fit on a certain bed.
Oh.
Oh, yes. I know this from the myth of Theseus.
Okay. So he picks Procrustes because he feels like it matches the situation in England for what they're doing with education. Either cutting off people's legs or stretching them too far.
Metaphorically, right?
Metaphorically speaking. It's time for another reading.
Okay.
Oh, God. Please no more popcorn. Are you committed to the popcorn?
You get to read the whole thing.
I mean, that's the other option.
I guess it is.
Okay, I'll take us off. Education will be regarded as a preparation for livelihood as well as for life, as a training for working citizens rather than for a leisured class. Further, the waste of human effort will be avoided as far as possible by constantly observing the individual child and guiding him along lines which will offer him the best chance of intellectual progress and which give the best opportunities for a career in life. Popcorn Mealey.
Okay. No pupil whose schooling is provided wholly or partly at public expense will be allowed to proceed to courses for which, in the opinion of the competent authority, he is unfitted, though no obstacles will be placed in the way of a transfer from one course to another if circumstances warrant it. Tudisco.
As a corollary, we shall give less exclusive reverence to purely bookish attainments, and we shall realize that training and craftsmanship may be as productive to one individual, and hence to the state, as training in the differential calculus is to another.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what are y'all's thoughts on this?
I mean, 1927, like, the idea of raising a child means, no, hit him harder. So, like, I'm pretty impressed with this, like, hey, maybe we should, like, talk to him.
Yeah.
I think that's really nice.
Yes.
So they're talking about retaining, right? Like, that's the middle part. Nobody should be able to move forward unless a competent authority, like, says that they should.
Not move forward.
Yeah, so it's like
Or they should be held
being
back.
Not held back. They don't get that path.
Oh.
You get a path of the bookish learning, and if you are unable to do that, we're not going to waste all our resources on you. You get the life of craftsmanship.
Oh, it's tracking.
Yes, it is.
So tell us about tracking. Not everybody who listens to our podcast is an educator.
I feel like we don't do tracking as much as we used to. I feel like when I was younger, there were like 3 different tracks you could go on.
In the state of North Carolina, at least.
Yes. I mean, education is largely a state-by-state decision. But there was like the college prep track. I remember that. And it was all the courses that you would need to take to be accepted into college. And then there was, it was like the tech one. But that was for like trade schools.
Kind of, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's when you would be able to take a lot of like the shop classes The first school that I ever taught at had like a really robust, I can't think of the word. What do you call that department?
Vocational?
Vocational. Oh my gosh. Yeah. There were a ton of vocational classes because students who went to that high school were far more likely to go into that system. I can't remember what the third one was.
But it was for people who were very low.
Sure. That was like a certificate of completion, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that was tracking.
There's some philosophy behind this pedagogically, but in America, it's mostly just racism. So that's why it's really frowned upon.
Say, and in England, it's classism, which is their version of racism since they only have mostly one race.
It's a classier version.
It's a version with a monocle.
Yes.
Well, let me read a little bit more from the book for you.
Oh, God.
Okay.
The fallacy lies in the assumption that everybody is capable of being educated. Those who are personally in touch with schools see only too clearly how unwarrantable such an assumption is. Just as democracy presupposes education, so education presupposes children who are educable. It would seem, therefore, that political and social reformers who are still looking for a panacea must go to the eugenicists.
Ah,
There we go.
no!
Woo! Oh man, I didn't have my seatbelt on.
Yeah. Okay.
That was a sharp right.
Yep. Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
I'm going to have to charge you for that whiplash. Yikes.
I'm just saying, education is important, so murder the dumb ones.
It's a part of a larger movement that was born out of early 1900s liberalism that we need to have a democracy, but not everyone's capable of democracy because they're racist or classist, as Mealey points out, because this is the British part.
I mean, that's Animal Farm there as well, right? All animals created equal, but some are more equal or whatever, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So he says in order to have a democracy, we got to have them educated, and if we're going to have them educated, they can't all do it. Then we're going to have to make sure that only the good ones are breeding.
Oh, God.
The other thing is, too, and Patrick, correct me here, because you're the history teacher, but in 1927, like, honestly, pre-Nazis, like, eugenics was a common, like, collegiate conversation, right, of what should happen. And
fascism was definitely up and coming in 1927.
Yeah, but it was also popular. Like, it didn't have that bad stain on it that one guy did.
Yeah.
So
One guy.
Fascism for the rest of us. Stupid guy.
Yeah, exactly. So, but also back then, there's no genetic science. So back at this time, people genuinely believed that there were different species of human separating their races.
Mhm.
So, like, racism was literally baked into, like, a lot of the biology lessons at the time. Like, that was the science that a lot of people embraced.
What was that thing where you would, like, identify different, like, shapes of humans and call them?
Phrenology.
Like with the head?
I think that was it. Yeah.
So let's talk about the relationship between eugenics and public education.
Do we have to?
I would like you to just say there is none. The end.
Unfortunately, there is. So standardized tests
Oh, God.
were pioneered by eugenicists who wanted to prove white superiority.
Oh, my God.
I'm keeping that in my back pocket from anytime anyone talks about standardized tests now.
Oh, yeah. When people say IQ tests are racist, no, man. IQ tests are racist.
So in his 1923 book, A Study on American Intelligence, psychologist and eugenicist Carl Brigham wrote that African Americans were on the low end of the racial, ethnic, and or cultural spectrum. Testing, he believed, showed the superiority of the Nordic race group and warned of promiscuous intermingling of the new immigrants in the American gene pool.
So did you guys call me on for this episode because you thought I was racist? Or
Oh, I know.
Are y'all familiar with Carl Brigham?
No.
So Brigham developed some aptitude tests for the Army during World War I and was commissioned by a little group called the College Board and helped to develop something that we know as the SAT.
There you go.
Oh, the SAT is racist.
Yeah, that's not news. That's not news at all.
Oh, my God. All of this standardized testing, the SAT, Army aptitude, like all of that is just birthed out of like a eugenicist?
Literally.
Oh, God. Well, not literally birthed.
And as Tudisco mentioned, the fascists were really impressed with American eugenicism and adopted some of their policies from us.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, a lot.
Final question on this one. Do you know what SAT stands for?
Scholastic aptitude
Scholastic
test.
aptitude.
It hasn't stood for that since the 90s.
Oh.
They took that out because they didn't want the connotation that aptitude is somehow innate. So they changed it to the Scholastic Assessment Test, but now it stands for nothing.
Oh, it's just the SAT?
It's just that it's like KFC. It stands for nothing.
Oh, I don't know how to feel about that.
It's intimidating enough with just the 3 letters. You know. It's like when a superhero movie comes out and they just put the symbol up. It's like, yeah, you know.
All right, we need a palate cleanser.
Please.
From eugenics, do you suggest lemon?
Awesome.
So our palate cleanser is going to come from 1931.
Where all palate cleansers come from.
Yes.
So we're known as a chill year.
Popcorn Tudisco.
All right, 1931, the teacher in the high school of the future. In the past, the school has been a subject learning and subject testing institution. In the future, it will conceive education as growth in the personality of each pupil, dull and bright, bad and good. In the future, it will elevate art and music and dramatics and mechanics and executive activities and health at least as high as it now holds Latin and algebra and chronological history and the rest of the traditional learning, in quotation marks, which so few retain except those who teach it to others who forget it.
Wow. I love that last sentence. That's beautiful.
So this is from an article by a guy named Philip W.L. Cox. I actually have several quotes because I genuinely loved everything he said.
Okay, cool.
What's y'all's reaction to this?
I think that's he's living in a somewhat dream world and kind of like idealistic, but I think he's basing it on truths he's experienced and what he thinks how we could improve it.
Alex, will you move forward? Read the next one.
Yeah. I just want to say, as a former dramatics teacher, that I don't feel like my theater class was as quite as high as math and English, but it was a course that you could get credit for. So it's, GPA-wise equal, which a lot of my kids didn't think was the case. In the future, education will be conceived to be the process of helping boys and girls to set up objectives for themselves which are dynamic for them, reasonable of attainment, and worthwhile, and in helping each one to accomplish his objectives. Education so conceived comes to be an inner urge for which the school permits and encourages expression. Right answers, wrong procedures, along with true, false, and completion tests, and the whole recitation class mode become absurd and intolerable in the child-centered school.
Preach.
Child-centered school. That's some Montessori stuff.
It is. Yeah, I was going to say, the other one kind of had a little Montessori flavor as well.
I'll say this too, going to the 30s, it's just super far back, but when they talk about school at this point, are they talking about all levels of school or college? Because both of these pretty well explain college, right? Yeah, I mean, you can get a degree in art and drama, just like you can get a degree in science.
This one is specifically high school.
Okay.
It says the teacher in the high school of the future at the title, Tudisco, so he's not talking about college.
And I was reading the paragraph so close, I'm like, it's got to be in here somewhere. I don't know what I have to read. God.
I like the idea of, they're talking about setting up objectives for themselves, like kids doing that and then trying to meet their goals. We do some goal setting, I feel like, in school. We have seminar classes at our school where I feel like they do a lot of goal setting. That's where they learn about SMART goals and all of that. But I really like that. The idea of everything having to be right and wrong, true or false, kind of doing away with that. I feel like that's more realistic for life. Maybe not math.
As a math teacher, I like the concept because I was just in a horrible professional development. And this isn't a visual podcast, but we were told, you pretend you're a student, and what do you do when you see this problem? And it's Farmer Jones Field, okay? And then they show a picture, and it's this bizarre-looking triangle. It's got the angles, one's 140 and one's 27 or whatever it was, 139. It doesn't matter, and it has the length of one of the sides. And pretend you're a student and you see this, what would you do? I said, first of all, no farmer has a field that looks like that. I said, second of all, what farmer knows the angles of the corners of his fields, but doesn't know how long the sides of his fields are?
He only has a protractor.
Yes, you can't measure the. I'm like,
He has a protractor and hope.
what math should be is, and this is what happens with math, with word problems is they take a concept and they go, how can we make this real world? And they just kind of jam it into some context that it doesn't fit, rather than go, hey, kid, what's the thing you'd like to know? You know what I mean? And then like that has a number for an answer, and then let's figure out what the math would be to actually solve that problem. You know what I mean? Like how long could we, if we sealed the doors and things here, how long could like the 30 of us breathe before we run out of oxygen? And let's do the math on that, or the chemistry on that, and that would be like a problem.
Kids like
we
dark
could
stuff
solve.
like that.
They do.
Right.
Right.
That's just where my mind goes. But what I'm saying is, once you say that, then you go, okay, let's, we've got a lot of math. We have to like figure the volume of the room. We have to figure out how many of us there are, how much longs to take, how much does oxygen, and all of a sudden there's all this stuff you can learn. You know what I mean? And as opposed to just coming up with this as a math standard that someone's determined is important, and now we have to create some kind of problem around that thing. So yeah.
I mean, I need to know what's going to happen if I buy 47 watermelons at the store.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
And then you drop 13 of them on the way to your car. I will say this too. Speaking of like Montessori stuff and no right, wrong, true, false questions, Mealey's the only teacher here who is currently ungraded.
Yes.
How do you mean?
I am. Yeah. Do you want me to elaborate on that?
He doesn't grade.
Oh,
You
okay.
don't grade?
So what I do is I give my kids assessments, and they do them, and I give them feedback on the assessment. I do not give number. They have an opportunity to correct it. They can correct as much as they want. They can use Google, whatever they want to get it corrected. And then I have a conference with each student at the end of each unit, basically, where I sit down with them and talk about what they've learned and what they know and what they don't know. And then, because I'm not allowed to not put any grades in because of the system that I'm in, I ask them, what would you like me to put in for a grade? And they tell me the number, and that is what I put in.
That's beautiful.
That's amazing.
And at the end of the quarter and at the end of the semester, we do that as well, and have another conference and do that. And it is wild. It was very scary for me the first time that I did it. And if you have any questions about it, I can answer any kind of question you got about it.
I feel like I wouldn't be able to get away with that. Has anybody in admin said anything to you about it, or
I sat down and talked to I did it for a semester without telling.
Good.
Right. And then
they wouldn't notice anyway.
They would not.
Right, no, and I told the kids not to say anything. But then I talk a lot, as this podcast is evidence. So I'm like, it's going to get out. Eventually he's going to find out. So I went to my principal. I said, can I have a meeting with you? And he said, sure. And then I explained to him that I'm doing that. And the biggest thing that I explained to him, is that like I'm assessing, and it's not just randomly assigning numbers to kids. And what I was told when I met other people who have done it, it turned out to be true. Like, if I ask you how good a teacher you are from 1 to 100, Alex, what are you going to give yourself?
Oh, gosh. Like an 80? Like, I think I'm pretty good, but I'm not like a teacher of the year.
Patrick, what would you give Alex?
Oh, Alex is a 97. She loses 3 points for self-effacement.
Right? And that's what happens. Like, people say, oh, the kids will just give themselves hundreds. No, they'll do exactly what she did, whereas they will and you literally have to build them up to say, no, you're actually better than that, and sometimes what helps them is because they're all tied into this whole retest. The highest you can get is a 80, which is in our system that I exist in. They'll be like, well, I'd give myself an 80. I'm like, why? Well, because I didn't get it all right the first time. I'm like, that's not how life works. I said, if I gave you a brand new one and you did it over again and you could use this as notes, but the numbers would be different, so you'd be doing it, what do you think you would get? They go, oh, I get like a 95. I'm like, I'm going to put a 95 in. And then we just roll on. And so
you're like my hero. Yeah. This is amazing.
Truly.
Yeah. No, it's really cool.
Our school that we teach at is K-12, and our son's in there now. He's in first grade now. and they decided that elementary school would have no grades.
Nice. Right.
So K through 5, they have no grades. What they do instead is portfolios, and they do still do assessments, like online assessments just to kind of keep track.
Right.
But there's no grades. There's no report card. Instead, what they do at the end of each quarter is they have student-parent conferences. And as the kids get older, they become more student-led conferences.
Yep.
And they just kind of show them all of their work and this is where they are. This is their strengths and weaknesses.
Exactly. You know what I mean?
I love that. As a parent, that is so much more informative to me than just getting an A or a B or an S for satisfactory.
It's less stressful too.
Yeah.
Right. And you're English teachers and you know this. You can spend 20 minutes putting all these marks and all these feedback on a kid's paper, and when you hand it to them, they ignore that. If there is an 87 or a C or whatever it is on the top, that's all they care about. They do not care about any of the feedback.
Yep.
And that's the mistake they're going to make on every paper ever.
I really love all that. I want to do the next quote from this.
Yeah.
Who's doing this one?
Alex read the last one, I think.
I got this one.
Okay, go.
All right. If the high school of the future...
The high school! Yes, not the college. Go ahead. Shut up.
If the high school of the future shall accord with the sketch which has just been given, then what of the high school teacher in this future school? He will change, is now changing, because less and less we do evaluate his service in terms of discipline, verbal masteries, and clerical promptness. More and more, we are evaluating him as a guide, philosopher, and friend of his young fellow students. We are expecting him to lead his charges to find the adventure, the beauty, and the challenges of life, and to help them plan and execute their attack on such problems as their school lives and their home lives hold. The teacher of the future high school will have learned to deal with pupil behaviors and pupil attitudes, not as acts calling for punishment or praise, so much as symptoms of deep-lying conditions.
Wow.
The 30s?
This is 4 years after the eugenicist wrote his book.
Yes.
This is amazing. It's so hopeful.
Yes.
Yeah, well, not realistic, but hopeful.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that kid keeps screaming to himself and hitting people. Let's suspend him.
Yeah.
It's amazing they're talking about teacher evaluations and what teachers would be evaluated on in the future. And I mean, we've all been evaluated with the same North Carolina evaluation system. And it's amazing how much of that evaluation, one of those 5 standards is about your work in the classroom.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's basically how good are you at complying, really, is really what it is.
There's so much that's not about teaching and being in my classroom with my students in there on that evaluation system. And I know that every state is different.
I'll say, culturally, we're getting closer to there now than we were in the 30s, right?
Yeah.
In the 30s, you weren't friends with your teacher, but in these days, not that I'm friends with my students, but we're friendlier than, I imagine a teacher would be back in the 40s, right?
Right. You have a relationship with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So overall, Dr. Cox, I think, has a number of predictions here. And unlike a lot of things that we cover, they're predictions I want to be true. What would you give him in terms of how accurate he is?
I mean, I feel like it depends on the school, right? There are some schools that are very into this, child first, let's go over feelings and goals and, see bad behavior being a symptom of other conditions as opposed to this kid just sucks. It really does depend on the school. There are some schools that I would say they're 90% of all of these things and really believe in these things. And then there are plenty of other schools where this is way off.
Yeah.
I was going to say, and inside those other schools, there's always the spectrum of the teachers inside the schools, because, there's always the old school teachers in the school as well as the new.
So I'll say this isn't the average school, obviously, but I think these ideas are more prevalent today than they would have been 100 years ago. So
we're getting closer.
Moving closer to that than they were.
Yeah.
I don't know how close it'll get to it.
These are the things that the people who have not been in the classroom for a long time and then get paid lots of money to come around to our schools to like tell us how we should be doing things.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what they're promoting.
A lot of them, yep.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we're going to move forward to 1958.
Let's see
Okay.
Elvis's influence on future prognosticators of education. Was that what's going to happen?
When y'all were growing up, did you read the Sunday Funnies?
Yes.
Like just the comics in the newspaper?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you have any favorite
That's a
comics?
weird way to ask it, I guess.
Garfield's a hoot.
I liked Hagar the Horrible.
Charlie Brown.
The Lockhorns.
Blondie.
Andy Capp. Blondie was good. Family Circus. Doonesbury. Even though I didn't completely understand it because I was too young, but I did like it.
Right.
I like Zitz and Baby Blues.
Zitz was good.
And, yeah, Boondocks.
I did like Zitz. Pearls Before Swine was
yeah.
probably my favorite.
Sadly, none of us are old enough to have read Closer Than We Think.
No idea. No.
So Closer Than We Think ran from 1958 to 1963. It was written and illustrated by a Detroit artist named Arthur Radabaugh. He was originally a commercial illustrator. He did a lot of magazine covers and advertisements in magazines. But in the 1950s, color photography became very popular in magazines and started being used in advertisements. So he was out of a job. So he started drawing a Sunday Funny. And he did a number of predictions in this about things in the future that are closer than we think. They are beautiful, fanciful illustrations. He was an amazing artist. Some of them are kind of fun and crazy. Glass domed houses, throwaway clothes, a sunray sedan, bloodless surgery, things like that. But we're going to take a look at one that is about the Pushbutton classroom.
Oh, nice. Oh, look at those Chromebooks. Huh?
I'm worried about the kid flying a helicopter right outside the window.
Yeah, that thing from the Road Warrior.
Mad Max?
Yeah, but Mad Max was the first one, and then Road Warrior was the second one. And in the second one, there was the guy that flew a helicopter extremely similar to that.
To start off with, should we describe what we're looking
Yes. Yes.
So Petter's trying to get out for us.
Before we read the thing, I'd like for one of us to go through and just tell us what the picture
Pause
shows.
on the podcast and watch Road Warrior with Max.
We're really giving the listeners the wrong impression saying that this looks like the Road Warrior.
It really does not.
It is a sleek, futuristic image.
It's got a little more primary colors, but whatever.
Okay.
So, what do you see in this image?
Students sitting at looks like their desk has turned into a computer where it's got a small screen, possibly a camera, a microphone. What's that thing sticking out at the top? And a whole lot of buttons, like it might be a keyboard, but might not, with like a rainbow of buttons that kind of like arches across the thing. It's very, you saw like
mid-century modern.
Mid-century modern, that's what I'm thinking. Thank you. Mid-century modern furniture, kind of like imagined, yeah.
And then what's at the front of the classroom?
You have a projection of the teacher. So you don't have an actual teacher at the front. It's like a big screen, like a big television screen. And then the teacher is teaching virtually.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, outside these giant windows that I am incredibly envious of, there are kids flying little, like, gyroscopes. Is that what they're called?
That's what it looks like, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if that's, like, how they get to and from class, or if that's just a weird thing the school is going on, but that's interesting.
All right, there's a little text at the bottom that gives an explanation of what's going on here. Alex, do you mind reading that?
Sure. Push-button education. Tomorrow's schools will be more crowded. Teachers will be correspondingly fewer. Plans for a push-button school have already been proposed by Dr. Simon Ramo, science faculty member at California Institute of Technology. Teaching would be by means of sound movies and mechanical tabulating machines. Pupils would record attendance and answer questions by pushing buttons. Special machines would be geared for each individual student so he could advance as rapidly as his abilities warranted. Progress records, also kept by machine, would be periodically reviewed by skilled teachers, and personal help would be available when necessary.
What are y'all's thoughts?
It's definitely very accurate. There's a lot of things like that are happening. Tudisco, you Yes, not in the picture, but like the words. You've got the what are those tests? The IMAP tests and
Oh yeah, map testing. Mhm.
yeah.
I'll say this, like, this is how some things work, right? Like, this is kind of describing like Duolingo
Mhm.
Yeah.
or looking something up
Khan
on YouTube,
Academy.
but not
Mm-hmm.
Khan Academy, but not like public education as a whole.
But some teachers integrate that kind of stuff in their classroom, though.
Yeah, definitely. And even online schools, like if you do Edgenuity, which is like a completely online schooling
Mm-hmm.
system, they still don't do that sort of up and down mastery tracking. Like it's still just assignments that you have to complete. But Khan Academy, I know, was really founded on this idea because I had my students read an article by Sal Khan on Let's Teach Students for Mastery, Not Test Scores, where like the foundation of Khan Academy is on the idea of mastery. It's not enough to just do something once, you get your score and you move on, but it's fixing those problems and then like keep going until you move up at your own pace, which like you said is Duolingo as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll say my argument this isn't like public education was a lot stronger before COVID.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But even like in our classrooms today, it's almost like what the caption is saying is talking about one thing, and then what I'm seeing in the image is another thing. Because what I'm seeing in the image, even though the computers themselves are not exactly what our computers look like, and the teacher is still physically there, like that's what my classroom looks like when they
Yeah.
all have their iPads and they're typing away, and like that's how they work.
Right. And the kids all have the exact same math problem on their screen,
Mhm.
and the teacher has the exact same math problem on her screen.
Yeah, they're playing Kahoot.
They are. They're all playing Kahoot.
I'll say this too, the philosophy behind the technology here is kind of how we build classrooms today, right? Like it should be mostly focused on the student, and the teacher should be monitoring data
Mhm.
and figuring out which students to like work in small groups with or who needs extra help. Like, so there's a lot in like the philosophy of this classroom that is still true today.
And if I had time, I would do that.
Well, that makes me think about AI, and could we eventually get to a point where that is feasible for an individual teacher to do because they have AI helping them help the students? Like I'm just one person. I can't give the individualized learning I would love to give to a room of 28. But if I have a robot, AI powered brain that can also help me do that, like maybe that's possible.
They made a documentary about that called Megan. It didn't end well.
The doll.
Yes.
Yes.
So, author Radabaugh did not come up with this idea himself. As you can see, he cites Dr. Simon Ramo for this. Dr. Simon Ramo did teach at Caltech. He also worked for Howard Hughes, but when he got frustrated with Hughes' erratic behavior, he went and started his own company. Ramo is known as the father of ICBMs,
What's that?
an intercontinental ballistic missile.
Ballistic missile.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were talking about. I was hoping I was wrong.
Hit pause and watch the 80s movie War Games.
What a resume. I'm impressed.
In 1957, he wrote an article called A New Technique of Education, and he talked about push-button classrooms. So he said, this classroom has some special equipment. Each chair has a special set of push buttons, and of course, the constant slot into which a student places his identification plate. The plate automatically records his presence at that class, and it connects his push buttons with the master records machine. And it kind of goes on like that. But what I thought was interesting
That was pretty cool.
was that this guy lived for a long time. So he later, if you move forward, you will see images of a patent that he made for a method and apparatus for interactive, computer-based, automatically adaptable learning, which he patented in 2012.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
He is the oldest person
What?
to ever receive a patent at 100.
Oh, my God.
Wow. You do a ridiculous amount of research for this podcast, by the way. It is just, I mean,
We are
it
thorough.
it is insane. Yeah, that's that.
Yeah, when Neil and I had a podcast, the first question would always be like, wait, how do you say your name?
Yeah, yes.
And that's after we already clicked record.
I just found other teachers with a lot of followers on Twitter and invited them on. Anyway, go ahead.
So this was not the only Closer Than You Think comic about education. There was one more. So if you move forward again, you will see the other one, which was about the classroom in every home.
Oh, so that's COVID.
So this one is actually the COVID one. The other one I've been doing for a while. But this one says that classroom automation may foreshadow an end to schoolhouses. Lessons would be televised to students going to school, in quotes, at home, where their work would be done and transmitted to a control center for correction and grading.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm the control center.
Yeah, that's doing all your work. The only thing that he got wrong with this, I would say, is that it's 3 separate screens. One for the TV instructor, one for the test questions, and then one is an electronic notebook to write on. Whereas now it's just all, their laptop or their iPad.
Yeah, but this could also represent like separate windows. Like the idea of like having 2 windows open on one screen would have been unfathomable. And when was this? 1960.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
So
I do like the little kids that are out. What's up with all these giant windows? I'm so jealous of these giant windows. These kids that are out in the front yard, like clearly calling for him to come and play. He's like in the middle of class. Like, shouldn't these kids also be in class?
they're all like, Billy, can you come out? My uncle says that this virus isn't even real.
Exactly. Yes. His mom's like, nope, eat your DoorDash and be quiet.
I always love how optimistic the future is. Like, look at that car.
That's nice.
Like, that's so awesome. Like, they had such high hopes for us. And I think about this every time I have to, like, do something that feels really old-fashioned. Like, every time I have to, like, tie my shoes. And I just think, what are we doing? Why is this happening to me? Or anytime I have to, like, sign a piece of paper, like, do I really need to put my name down in a squiggle to prove that I spent $4 at Target? Like,
Please
our
don't
world
make me
is
do
so
that.
arcane.
But tied to like Alex commenting on the big window, like that's like always people's idea of the future. Like notice that the table is made out of glass. There's always like things that are made out of like clear plastic or glass in the future for some reason. That's always like a thing. Or at least it
Including
was for a
clothing.
long time. Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Did a whole thing on like men's fashion predictions of like the year 2000, and there was so much plexiglass involved.
All right. Any final thoughts on Closer Than We Think?
It's like ultimately like a positive viewpoint, right? Like it's trying to be hopeful. I feel like a lot of these are trying to be hopeful. Even the really messed up ones are seeing education as being better as opposed to being worse in the future.
Yeah.
Right. And obviously you see the influence of so much stuff being automated and mechanized in the 50s. So that just the assumption that it'll just continue to go forward. Tudisco, let's pack up our backpacks and stand by the door, okay?
Well, everyone, that's our show. If you like Mistopian, please take a moment to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and also on Spotify. It's the biggest and best way you can help us make sure that this podcast has a future. You can follow us at Mistopian Pod on all major social media outlets, although maybe not all. You can also check out our website, mistopianpod.com, to get more details about the sources and information used on our show. If you want to drop us a line, you can shoot us a DM on social media, or you can email us at contact@mistopianpod.com. A huge thanks to Mealey and Tudisco. Where can people find you guys?
I'm on the Twitter and Instagram. It used to be at Unprocast, but now it's at Mealey Laughs, since we like kind of we sunset the podcast-ish. So at Mealey Laughs. I'm sure there's a link in the show notes, boys and girls. Okay.
Absolutely.
And don't find me.
You can follow Alex on Twitter and Instagram at IamTheBestAlex, and me on Zoopy, where I've archived all my old pandemic-related asynchronous lectures for posterity. Until next time, remember, our world today is neither utopian nor dystopian. It's simply mistopian. All right, here's my last question to you guys. What technology do you wish would be invented to help you teach?
Oh.
Automatic grader. Automatic grader of essays with feedback.
Yes.
Wow.
Essays are just such a bear, and AP Lang is just all essays.
Yeah.
And I try to give good feedback that'll help them. It's just a lot. I feel like that is the one thing I spend all my time doing. It's just grading.
I can't think of anything of technology that I want. I don't know.
Can I say one technology I'm glad I don't have in the classroom?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm glad those tubes that Mealey was talking about is not in a public school because they'd be filled with urine in
Oh, yeah.
2 minutes. Like,
That's true.
It would be so gross. That tube would
oh
get...
yeah.
Ugh.
Oh, the custodians would never clean it, and they're not paid enough to. Like, it's not their problem. But like, some kid poured orange juice in it 2 years ago, and now that's your cross to bear because you're sat next to it. Like,
Could you imagine the TikTok challenges that revolved around
Yes.
pneumatic tubes?
Y'all are coming up with all types of like actual helpful stuff, and all I want is a water bottle so that when the kid knocks it off the desk, I don't think I'm getting shot.